So the German wind industry is going through an incredible transition at the moment. We used to have a fixed feed-in tariff for when we generated wind energy in Germany, but as of the beginning of this year, the government has started, or the Bundesnetzagentur has started doing an auction, where instead of saying we're going to pay 8 cents per kilowatt hour for wind energy, build as much wind energy as you can for 8 cents, they say we're going to build 2.8 gigawatts of wind energy, and we're going to give it to the cheapest 2.8 gigawatts. So it's a different approach. The government doesn't set the price of wind energy; it sets the volume of wind energy. This auction transition has happened all over the world. It's happened in South Africa, one of the earliest ones, very successful. It's happened in Italy. It's happened in Mexico, Brazil, recently in Spain. I mean, the whole world is shifting to this model because governments have realized that renewable energy is extremely cheap. The technology is developing incredibly quickly, and the government is not able to really set a price and say this is the price that renewable energy should be, because whatever they set is no longer the right price a year later. And instead of saying that, they say, okay, we won't do that. We'll set a volume and let the market decide the price. So it's been a change, and just the move from the feed-in tariff to the auction system was already a huge change for the German market, and a lot of concerns. The 2.8 gigawatts is not enough volume. We want to build more. 2.8 gigawatts will not secure the Energiewende, the transition to renewable energy at the speed we need. So that's already a big concern. And then in the first auction round, which happened on the 2nd of May, I don't know, the result was an absolute shock for the industry. And I won't go yet right now into the details, but the German renewable industry in the moment is really trying to work out how on earth to operate in this new environment. For my ability to build wind power plants in Germany, I need a German legislative environment to support that. So whatever is decided at EU level, it needs to be broken down to a constructive and usable national legislation. I used to work in the UK. They also have EU targets. I don't know how long they're still valid when they leave the European Union, but they don't have any support for onshore wind, or they have very limited support for onshore wind at the moment. EU targets are not going to secure an energy transition. It needs that. We need national legislation to support that. I generally hope that the overall importance of legislation will reduce in the future as wind becomes the undisputed cost leader in energy generation. There is less need for such an extensive legislative environment to support that. You still need a lot of legislation. You need legislation governing how you handle the grid and how you trade energy and how you secure a long-term energy price over 20 years or even more. So there's still a lot of legislation needed, but certainly the need for subsidy is reducing every year as wind becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. The return on investment expectations for wind developers are changing. With the auction, they are going down and down. There's just a lot less money to be earned in the renewable business as there was before. One of the things, particularly in Germany, that's maybe interesting is a wind asset, a wind farm generating power is an incredibly safe investment. It's near on zero risk. I mean, turbine technology is incredibly reliable. We're running, our fleet is running above, I think, 98% availability. I mean, it just runs all the time. So the overall risks of wind are super low. And what we've seen is that players like pension funds that have very, very low return on investment expectations have started stepping in and funding wind parks, and sometimes even funding them before they get built. Really, the benchmark, if you want to build wind in Germany, the benchmark return on investment is a pension fund. They're willing to buy that wind product, that wind farm, and run it for 20 years at a very marginal profit. And you also have to see, I mean, what else do they have for options right now? I mean, interest rates are so low in the market that if you can get 3 or 4% per year internal rate of return from a wind farm, that's a great return on investment for your pension, for basically a zero risk investment. When we look at future technology development in the wind area, I would split it into two. We've got what we're doing with the turbine and what we're doing with everything else. Let's look at the turbine. Today, we sell and install a turbine called the V136, 3.6 megawatt. That turbine costs roughly the same as the V112 turbine cost when it was released in 2010. But it produces, I haven't got the number in my head, but I think 50% more. So for the same investment cost, we have a turbine that produces 50% more. It's taken 6 years, but it's incredible improvement. It's not a jump, there were steps along the way. The next turbine, we just announced the V150, 4.2 megawatt. That's another huge step in reducing cost of energy. So that's the first thing. The wind turbines are going to get more powerful, more efficient, and cheaper. Then there's the whole other area, which I hinted about earlier, is that we are transforming, and we've been doing this for years, but we're transforming from manufacturing turbines to creating power plants. And there's so much more potential in that, in terms of supporting the stability of the grid, in terms of energy storage, in terms of combining with solar. There's so much potential to realize more efficiencies through the power plant approach. And then finally we come to the area of digitalization. The wind turbines that we produce today, they are throwing data out, and we're collecting all that data. They have hundreds of sensors. There's so much data, and when we look at let's take a quick look at the 3 megawatt platform. The 3 megawatt platform, which we've been installing since 2010, V112, V117, V126, V136, and now V150, this platform of turbines, they're all more or less the same. And we've been gathering data from these turbines for 6 years, 7 years. And thousands of signals, or hundreds of signals from thousands of turbines. I mean, imagine that data resource. I mean, ultimately we need to get to 100% renewable energy. We're a bit of a way off, but so that means understanding how the wind blows and the sun shines. That is understanding the electricity market. You know, that is the core competence that defines being successful in the electricity market, is understanding these renewables. Last year, a law was introduced in Bayern, in Bavaria, for example, requiring houses to be at least 10 times the tip height away from the turbine, which is an example of the kind of anti-wind legislation and some element of resistance that's really counterproductive in the wind industry, because we as a manufacturer, we can always try and develop quieter turbines, or turbines that have a lower impact on people in the region. I'm going to give you an example of that. But simply having a rule that says they have to be a certain distance away, well, there's nothing that technology development can do to get around that. One of the things is wind turbines have aviation lights on top of them, and they flash at night. And that has, understandably, isn't particularly loved by people who live around them. If you live in the countryside and you're used to a very dark night, and then you see these red lights flashing on the top of a wind turbine, that's not super attractive, and I can understand that myself. So we've developed a system called Alight, which, instead of just having the turbines flashing all the time, it waits until there's an airplane in the vicinity, within, I think, 4 kilometers of the turbine, and then it turns the lights on and flashes. So it's what we call an on-demand aviation light system. So it only flashes when there's a reason to flash, and that has a dramatic impact on acceptance of wind turbines. So that's a good example where, understandably, there's been a bit of an acceptance issue with wind turbines. People didn't want to have these flashing lights, and then we, the turbine manufacturers, we've developed a solution to combat that. And I mean, that's kind of my challenge to the market. We want to change, or we have to change, to renewable energy. So let's focus on reducing the impact of wind turbines on local people.